Hello, I'm Mark Baer. You're watching the YourTown television program. My guest, Eleanora Baldwin. Welcome. So,
Thank
producer, TV host, Italian journalist. Your show is translated into 2 languages, ABC Cheese. Let's talk about what you're up to.
Well, I am in this dawn of my second maturity, let's call it. I am now new from coming from film, coming from graphic design, now finally found my niche in a television show that has me driving around Italy in search for the lesser known and most delicious cheese. That's my passion, is cheese. And I have been able to funnel my passion into my new profession. So I like to write, I like to photograph, I like to shoot footage, video footage, and put all of that, condense all that in my passion for cheese and in my show, AB Cheese, which totally works in Italian, doesn't work in English, but the title is a fun little joke on the fact that I'd like to taste them all. That's the claim. I want to taste them all.
So, okay, so you've got the best job in the world.
I do.
You're driving around Italy,
Yes.
tasting cheese, and you knew something about cheese before you started. What do you know now?
Well,
what
now
didn't you know that when you began?
I didn't know the people and the work that goes into making cheese, especially if you're breeding your own animals and you're making cheese from your own milk. There's no vacation time. There's only passion driving you because there's no big return, monetary. There is virtually a religion. You give yourself to the production of this, one of the first 4 man-made cheeses: wine, bread, olive oil, cheese. Those are the 4 pillars of the first foods that we humans started making. And if you are not passionate, if you don't believe in what you do, you cannot make cheese. And so that's the lesson. The biggest lesson I learned is behind every chunk of cheese, and there are so many, there is a person. There's a person's hands, there's a person's heart, and there's a person's dedication to the soil and the animals and maintaining a tradition that's probably handed down from parents or generations past. And so that is the most poetic and romantic thing in the world, in my opinion. And then cheese tastes so good.
So it must be like being a treasure hunter, because you must be finding something all the time.
Oh, definitely. The industrial cheeses we find in the supermarket, or the ones that are large distribution, they don't need to be talked about. They're well known already. I want to tell you about the one that's just made in this one person's garage turned into creamery. Or I want to tell you about the one that the family is just living on that. Or I want to talk to you about how to find Tuscan, where Tuscany now is a big travel destination. You want to go where the lesser known path. And so that's my quest, is, yes, finding, treasure hunting. That's a perfect term. You nailed it. And I do that also through another endeavor that it's parallel to the cheese, is a food and travel company that I co-founded in Italy. And that goes into a lot of that. So doing a lot of cheese hunting with people that are interested in doing that, and vineyard tours and cooking lessons and all sorts of fun stuff.
So you grew up in Rome,
Mm-hmm.
but your connection to the Monterey Peninsula, your father,
Peter Baldwin.
who we've just lost, and
Yes.
an icon here, a great raconteur, a fabulous film director, the last charming man, as I called him. And so you have a life here as well. You have this is a place in your life.
This is my other home.
This is
is
your
my
other home.
I live in Rome, and I raised my son there, but this is also home too. So, we flew in a couple days ago into LA and then drove up the coast 101, which was an incredible drive. And when I walked in the house, you know, I was home. It was home. And it's sad because my dad is gone, but he's hovering. He's here today. He's with us.
He's hovering, and he's sure alive in the minds of his friends.
Oh, yes.
He's so present. I mean, for a guy that's gone, he's a present guy.
Oh, yes.
Still
yes.
yakking, still talking, and still dressing nice.
Dressing
and
with the
I
sweater.
think I'll wear the blue one. Yes, he's with us. And I just want to very quickly before we move on,
yes.
let's talk about one of your great father-daughter memories.
Well, I think it's linked to travel. Linked to travel because those are the road trips that you do with someone important in your life. Those are the ones that stay branded in your memory. And this was a trip that the two of us took. I must have been 8 or 9, and we drove to Gubbio, which is a beautiful medieval town in Umbria, which is a teeny little landlocked region not far from Rome and Tuscany. So it's between Rome. Italy is a small little country, but it's full of little regions. So it's a region between Tuscany, the beautiful Renaissance, Florence and all that, and Rome, the imperial history of civilization. And Umbria is this beautiful rolling hills, and we did this driving through with the car, with this Renault, that's beat up Renault. We just drove, and we made up a song that I can still sing to you if I have the courage to, of our trip, and we went to this beautiful restaurant, and they took great care of us, and it was the perfect father-daughter time. My mom said, no, you're doing it alone. She, made us go on our own, and we made up the song about the cherry, which are these 3 large wooden structures from the Middle Ages that these crazy Gubbio residents race every year in May on their shoulders. But these are like these 30-foot structures. I mean, huge. And they race them up the mountain to the sanctuary. And so we made up the song about the cherry, and we just hung out. And it was a romantic father-daughter, and it was my coming of age because I was traveling with this man that Dad, I lived in Rome and he lived here in California, not here presently, not in Monterey at that time. He was
Hollywood.
still in LA.
Yeah, still in Hollywood.
But so we were always kind of separate. He would come to Rome, and we had Friday Night Fever. He brought back, it was Saturday Night Fever was the movie. This was later. And he would just surprise visit me and bring beautiful gifts and thoughtful things. But this was on my turf, and he was coming to, and it wasn't Rome. It was he and I alone in a place that neither of us knew. And now Gubbio's become a destination that we've always gone to, that my family goes to. And it's just a beautiful memory of just me and Dad.
So just apropos of nothing, I thinking of your dad, he was forever young. He was forever enthusiastic. He was forever youthful.
Yes.
And he turns what age is on its head because it's got a lot to do with enthusiasm and passion and aliveness and vitality.
And the awe of a child.
And
the maturity of a...
Yeah, he had that. And so he was never, he was my friend, but I never thought of him as a older person or this or that. Mm-hmm. He was always young, always contemporary, always knew what was happening, always in the mix. What magic. Yeah. And now let's go from that. So although you've never used any of these, getting forward in your career, you don't use the names or the titles, but your grandfather is Vittorio de Sica, the neorealist Italian cinema, one of the great directors of all time. And then I had the opportunity with your dad at the museum to play Bicycle Thief on the big screen.
That's one of the most iconic
and full of life and full of magic, and how this it's as if they wrapped up life around him in something and put it on a screen. It's just like it's like something they walked outside and just wrapped it up and made this thing that exists forever. It's so amazing.
And a very contemporary movie to this day, you know, of hardship of raising children, and now Italy's going through a little bit of, you know,
Crazy
turmoil.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, just not easy, but a very contemporary story, The Bicycle Thief. But in general, his entire filmmaking was neorealist, meaning that it was talking about the truth. It was just portraying the truth, and often done with non-actors, so...
No artifice.
No artifice.
And no money, relatively little budgets.
So Shoeshine, which was the first Oscar that he won, the camera was a Mitchell camera, and they had to kick it to start. And it had no sound, so they had to re-voice everything after, and it doesn't look like that. Anyway, so telling the truth was important to my grandfather, and my dad was a wonderful, you know, aspiring director at the time, and he arrived in Italy and met my grandfather through my mom, because they started. My mom was working in agency, a talent agency, and he walked in, and my mom said that she kind of nearly fell off the chair because my dad was very, very handsome.
He was a handsome devil, that Baldwin.
Yeah.
So I want to, just because our time is short, I want to. You were the living granddaughter that your grandfather knew, and I want to talk about you waking him up from his nap and your little ceremony, because that's so sweet.
We had a very very lovely ritual. Every Sunday he would come to lunch at my mom and my grandmother's house where I was raised, and we would have lunch, and then he would nap in a room in the dark with a plaid, he called it, with a little throw cashmere blanket. And when it was time to wake him up, it was my turn to bring him a little demi-tasse, a little teeny little cup of coffee with sugar in it already. He liked it very sweet. And I would just walk in the dark, open up the blinds, take the blanket off, and serve him his coffee. And the ritual was that it was a very quiet moment. We wouldn't say anything. He would just take a moment to wake up. He'd drink his espresso. And the cup had was like a little tulip cup that ended with a little tiny little circle. So the bottom of the base of the cup was very round. And he would leave a little drop of coffee, very sweet, ringlet of coffee, and that was my treat. He would give it to me, and it was our private moment. No one knew about it. My mom doesn't even know I've done this. My grandmother probably did, because she loved him very much. But that would be my little treat, a very sweet sip of grown-up coffee taken from the cup.
And he was a dashing, handsome. You know, I mean, these guys were the dudes. I'd look at your grandfather dressed in the old days, and man, he was amazing. So the other funniest story that you told me the other day was so he was known also to gamble, and he's won some and he lost some. Yep. And let's talk about the going to the casino.
Yeah, he would. He would always carve out some time between shoots he didn't choose his locations based on casinos, but maybe a little bit. And one time he was with my mother, who at the time was 7, in little pigtails and a little dress, and he just took her hand and walked her into the privé, which is the area where only the big players go and only men. So now he's walking into the 7-year-old.
No, where are we?
In Monte Carlo.
Okay, we're in Monte Carlo.
So I mean the casino, and he's walking in and he's saying, "See, honey, that big nice marble column over there, these beautiful floors. Daddy got all this for them." Because he had left so much money there that he had purchased all the renewal of the casino. It was all his doing. So I love that story.
That's that's so funny. And then what I don't know in just our little time left here, the relationship between Peter Baldwin and Vittorio de Sica.
Well, they met through my mom, and then they also were in a film together. Yeah. A film called Un amore a Roma. I don't know what it was translated in English. He was the star. My dad was the male lead. a very tormented young man who falls in love with the wrong girl. And the girl is a mini little actress that's trying to become famous, and she's working on set, and she asks her boyfriend to come visit her on set. The director on set is Vittorio de Sica, playing himself, and he's very frustrated because the actress is not very good. So they met through work, but then they also met because my dad asked, the day that he wants to ask for my mom's hand is also the day that they bring out in this restaurant in Paris this bottle of Haut-Brion 1955, like a baby, and they open it. The whole ritual, they pour a drop here, and my dad, while everyone's talking, nonchalantly pours half a bottle of Evian water in the wine, and the waiter faints. And my dad looks at my mom and is like, "You're going to marry this guy? Seriously?" But then they loved each other, and it was a great relationship. And my dad also was an AD for him and did subtitles and worked on many projects.
And, yeah. And then
it was a good collaboration, family-wise and work-wise.
So you've had, there aren't many people that have the Italian side, the Hollywood side.
I'm very fortunate.
But you've done it on your own. And just in our last minute, what's the future?
The future is hopefully a book deal, because I have a book in my head that's about cheese and travel and memoirs and movies. It's got a little bit of everything. Then, taking my tour business to a higher level, and then just developing more television shows, hopefully globally, taking the show not just as an Italian project, but taking it abroad, other cheese countries, including maybe the Monterey County.
And we talked about, just quickly in passing, the hole that Anthony Bourdain left behind.
Yeah,
because he encompassed adventure and conversation and lifestyle and life and passion into food. It wasn't a chef in a kitchen.
No.
And
you're
in that tradition.
And I'm in that. I really borrowed a lot from Bourdain, including the passion for writing comes from him. I owe all of my writing ramblings to his push and his passion and his incredible penmanship. He was such a good writer, not only a good, host and a great concept developer. He was a great writer. And yes, the show is all about eating. So I take that from, thank you, Tony, from that too, showing people how you enjoy the food and how you talk to the person and you're looking into someone's eyes. So it's really important for me to...
Just the fun, the life. These guys had life.
Life, and culture goes into that.
Your father had life, your grandfather had life.
Yes.
And you're the next. So anyway, this is great.
Oh.
We're out of here.
Thank you so much.
I'm Mark Baer. This has been a great pleasure. Eleanora Baldwin. You're watching the YourTown TV show, and we will be back. Adios.